Hello everybody, and welcome to your weekly astrological and energy report for the week beginning June 5th. I am including the 5th because it is the full moon and a partial lunar eclipse. The full moon is in Sagittarius. Forgive me because I do believe in my tiredness last week I claimed it was in Gemini, but that's mostly because of the whole nodal issue that we've moved into the Sagittarius Gemini north-south node alignment for the next 18 months. So that was what was on my mind. And sometimes when we ramble, we don't think. I will be getting right into our Spirit Animal Oracle card. Then we will read a Wisdom of the Oracle card. I have pulled both of those in advance of the reading, as well as our Celtic Cross spread for the sake of time, because I know that last week I was very chatty and the video went on for quite some time. Interesting little setup we have here. As you can see, I am not in my usual positioning, and I'm looking in the wrong direction. Apologies for that too. I have a little bit of a sore lower back from my workout, and so I am sitting on my bed. So forgive me. I hope it isn't too prison-like in the background with the white, cream white backdrop. Okay, so astrology. I guess we should talk about that aside from what we've just gone over in terms of the full moon. I think it's important to note that this year in 2020 we have 6 eclipse events, which is extraordinarily high. The most we can ever have, I believe, is 7, and so 6 is well above the average of 4 that we have come to expect most of the time. This says a lot for our time, in addition to everything else that we see that says a great deal for our time. In our current observations, what I would like to say is that because of the enormous amount of volatility in the planetary alignments at present, I think it's safe to say that all of us need to be extra vigilant, extra mindful of how we communicate with each other, because we have one common enemy, and that is authoritarianism in our institutions, in our society, in our governments. That is not to say that we should not respect authority. As we have discussed in the past, there is a big difference between authority and authoritarianism. Please, please, please make sure that you understand the difference between the two, because it is a matter of life and death and finding your purpose and being lost. We fight authoritarianism tooth and nail. We will not tolerate having to submit to authoritarian figures and ideology, because what we all need is truth, and the truth does set us free, and the truth is also the highest resonance of what we can embody as a frequency, emotionally and spiritually. And the truth can be ugly, the truth can be glorious, but either way, it is always fundamental. And we've seen what's happened to our society as a result of the truth becoming muddied by, I'm not really sure exactly what, but I guess a culture of deception, a culture of selfishness, the compromise on our values collectively over the course of the last 10 to 20 years is pretty flagrant when you start looking at it in context of what we're experiencing today, because that is really where this came from, this idea that everybody was climbing some kind of a ladder to who knows where, an endless pursuit of more at the expense of anyone and everyone else and anything else. And this is coming to an end. And it's a tough adjustment for all of us, because we are all so ego-driven, and we are all so drawn to possession and to power and to expressions of superiority, no matter what our differences are, whether that be ethnicity, culture, finance, class, education, and presentation. Of course, it's easy for me to say, or anyone within the spiritual community, to implore that we all focus on the fact that beyond our shells, we are all exactly the same. And that means that everyone has to question themselves on their motives. Everyone has to keep digging further and further into a better understanding of what motivates our actions. What draws us to chaos? What draws us to structure? This is what all of the energies of the planets, particularly Saturn, Pluto, and Jupiter this year, are forcing us into a better understanding of. And of course, right now, given that we're in this Venus retrograde, we don't even have our emotional truth as the foundation of our power right now, which makes things extra tricky. So, with eclipses bringing in massive new revelations and directions, and also clearing out old ones, and with the squares that we're experiencing in astrology, which form hard angles and therefore are difficult. They're not bad, but they're difficult. Particularly when they involve a planet like Mars, which for the time being is still in Cancer, and so therefore somewhat pacified. Wait, did I say Cancer? I meant Pisces. Sorry. Water signs. What can you do? There's a lot of tension beneath the surface right now, but what we have to pay attention to is when Mars goes into Aries, which it will do in the not too distant future. I don't know if it's this month or next month, but it's very soon, and that is going to be a very different situation on the tail of the eclipse energy that we're about to go into. We're going to get a little taste of it with the partial lunar eclipse. Then we have a solar eclipse 2 weeks after that, and then we have on the, I think the 5th of July, we have another eclipse. And I'm sorry. My eyes do actually feel a little sore, but I'm not sure why I'm pressuring my eyes like that. I think because of the feeling of pressure. It's like I'm being told that it's about pressure. There's a feeling of an enormous amount of pressure. We are in a pressure cooker right now. And once Mars goes into Aries, that pressure cooker is going to explode. And the likelihood is, as things are currently, that means massive amounts of social and civil unrest, and we all need to be prepared for that. We may also be seeing some pretty revolutionary developments in terms of how we are governed. I don't know whether that's for the better or the worse, but it's something we should all be mindful of and vigilant about going forth. That is all I'm going to say regarding the astrology, because that's collective, and on a personal level, I'm sure that there are things going on in your personal chart that are much more uplifting than these general energies, and that's something that we always have to remember as we go through these difficult times in the collective, on the macro level, because on the personal level, all kinds of wonderful things can be happening to you. So never forget that, because we have that power to use our personal planetary aspects to push through those very heavy outer aspects. Anyway, let's get right into these cards, because I am talking a lot again. I have to get used to this. Do you see that? I hope it's not in the reverse. It's Badger Spirit, if it is, and it's number 4. Be fearless and bold. Let's see if I can at least give you a little glimpse of that. And if it is mirrored, I apologize. And let's hope you can read backwards. Badger Spirit tells us, let's see. Badger Spirit rejoices at your persistence and commitment to what is true for you. Whatever you seek, your tenacity and faith in your partnership with Spirit is paying off, and the results will soon coalesce into form in your world. The gift of Badger Spirit is the surety that taking a risk now and being courageous, fearless, and bold will yield wondrous results. This is a time to harness your will and apply it consistently to the pursuit of your dreams. Know that no matter the temporary outer conditions, you will manifest your desires in divine timing and in the form that Spirit deems best for you. Badger Spirit says you have what it takes to get what you want, so assert yourself. Be fearless and be bold, shining your light as your purpose calls you into the world. New relationships are also given a green light now. Don't be afraid to make the first move. Badger Spirit loves your brave and mighty heart. And before I read the protection message, I would like to just tell you in advance that, we have a pretty intense Celtic cross spread this week that probably it indicates that what I just read is what we need to be aiming for, but it's not necessarily how we're going to be feeling. So I imagine the protection message might actually be more attuned to how we're feeling. When Badger Spirit comes to protect you, he reminds you that anger or aggression, argumentative behavior, and being pushy or manipulative will not result in a positive outcome. Perhaps someone close to you has excess Badger energy, or perhaps that energy is pent up in you. Either way, now is the time to calm down and allow the energy to pass through you. Go for a hike, brisk walk, shake it off, or dance it out so you can return to the situation determined and committed, but not so intense that you overwhelm others and yourself. The appearance of Badger Spirit also serves as a reminder if you have been relentlessly pursuing something that keeps eluding you. The message is that it's time to surrender it up to your higher power and focus on something else. Badger Spirit wants to protect you from self-will run rampant, from being obsessed with getting what you want in the form you prefer, in timing that fits perfectly with your notions of what has to be. Remember, the world doesn't revolve around your wants. Better, more beautiful opportunities will be the result when you release some of that Badger Spirit intensity along with your need to have it your way 100%. And that makes perfect sense to me, because I do actually feel that a lot of the problem right now is that we all feel divided. We all feel so individuated and so separate from one another that it's almost impossible for us to find our strength in surrender. Because when we surrender to spirit in the way that the protection message requests of us, we have more room to experience other people, to experience, segue, community. Also backwards, I think, for you guys, but maybe not. I guess I won't know until I edit this, but in any case, and I don't want to flip it because it always looks weird when you do that. But anyway, community is number 8, which is infinity. You know, the infinity symbol on its side, an 8 on its side. Community, the essential meaning of community from the wisdom of the oracle deck is belonging, being seen and understood by others, like-minded connections, a sense of family and friendship, knowing your place in the world. So I think this all ties in with Badger Spirit pretty succinctly. The oracle message of this card signals a new affiliation with a group. Humans are social creatures, and we need to know we are useful to our families and communities. In a community, everyone has an important function and feels, I matter. Membership in the group provides a sense of belonging, of kinship, and of purpose that comes from working together for the greater fulfillment of all. Perhaps you are part of a spiritual community or an artistic one. Perhaps you are in a learning community where you share your love of education. Regardless of its form or focus, your community brings you joy. You will be inspired by it and want to contribute to it. Your contribution may be as small as showing up or as large as becoming its leader. No matter your position in the group, your presence is needed. And I think it's very interesting too, because a lot of the memes and sort of spiritual proverbs that we see on social media as a result of the racial tensions here in the United States, and that are, you know, having a domino effect around other Western countries around the world. I've been seeing a lot of this idea that it's important to understand that, you know, everyone has a place for change. Everyone is a catalyst for change. Everybody has their own individual power. And, you know, the way that the media and our culture sets us up for failure is by presenting the idea that it's the person at the top of the mountain, or the person that shouts the loudest, or the person that is the most outrageous, or the most beautiful, or the thinnest, or the most muscular, or whatever the fuck it is that people are obsessed with through their ego. You know, we're fed into that idea that, like, anybody else is insignificant, that there is absolutely no value to doing something without it being recognized. And that is anti-spiritual. That's all I can say about it. It is anti-spiritual. So we have to follow our heart, because our heart knows what we must do for our greater purpose. Nobody else is going to be able to validate that. In fact, the chances are that nobody will ever in this lifetime, because legacy which we will get to in the Celtic cross, is not measured by societal achievement. Because what you do in this lifetime, you will be forgotten for. Nobody cares what anybody did. You know, maybe they care 100 years later if you're a historical figure. Maybe they care for some people if it's 500 years. Maybe for the occasional character in history, it could be as much as 2,000 or 3,000 years. But, I mean, what do you really know about those people? I mean, does anybody really know anything about Julius Caesar or Jesus Christ? No, we just know the stories that we're told. And it's their essence that is captured. So, if you're representing an essence, then that is what is of value to community in real time. Beyond that, you have no control over that, and it really is not very interesting. And all of the people that we pedestaled, particularly through the 20th century, and the onset of the idolatry that was fabricated out of Hollywood and eventually rock and roll too. Let's just call it for what it is. It's a bunch of fucking stupid nonsense, and it keeps us entertained, or has kept us entertained. But at this point, with the way that things are, I don't really think it has a lot of value other than how we commune with it individually. That is the experience between us and the art that we are experiencing. And if it is an art, then somehow we have to assess how much we're getting out of it. And if it's not that much, then we need to cast it aside. We don't need to know about people and their stupid lives any longer. It goes for social media too, right? It's a dichotomy because we want to be connected, but that's how we've been conditioned to believe that we connect, but it's false, and it's time to eradicate that nightmarish vision of connection and community and start taking it back and turning it into something that's tangible. Tangible, but also that you can feel wholeheartedly in here. Our underlying energy for the week, the Empress. Interesting because usually we would focus on the bountifulness of the Empress, the reproductive power, the creative power of Empress. But what I am getting from the Empress this week as our general energy is we're biding our time. We are in a period of stillness that feels very much in disalignment with the lack of stillness in the outside. The chaos in the outside world is contrary to how we are feeling on the inside. And we have to learn to reharness our own sense of variety, the variety within ourselves. You know, we're not these two-tone or three-tone individuals. We are, you know, the full rainbow spectrum. And I think we've gotten a little stagnant in that, and this is reminding us that no matter what goes on, this is where, you know, all of this is inside of us. In fact, in the image, it's almost as if, you know, she's just like sitting on it all, you know. She knows. and she's waiting for the right moment to use it. But work on that in alignment with yourself. It's about personal creation. It's about writing. It's about painting. It's about gardening. It's about communing with nature. It's about creation, synergy within the self with elements in our environment that we don't have to force in any way. I don't know where that came from, but that's what the message is. At the center of our reading, we are represented this week by the King of Pentacles, which is a pretty nice thing to be represented by. Again, interesting that we get the Empress and that, because it really is pointing towards us being in a place of being very secure within ourselves, feeling that we have the empowerment and the fullness of our reserves to work from, but we are also being severely limited by something too, because what crosses us is the goddamn Five of Pentacles that keeps coming back no matter what. And this reading is all about another cycle ending within ourselves. And that Five of Pentacles always comes up when we are being brought to understanding of a completion of a cycle, because the poverty consciousness that the Five of Pentacles represents is something that manifests when we're under pressure. When we're not under pressure and we go about our business, we can feel very centered and very aligned and very peaceful and synergistic, and then something goes wrong, or there's a curveball, and all of that goes out the window because of poverty consciousness, because we don't trust the universe to provide us with the safe haven and the correct path, no matter what the circumstances are. Once you come to a full acceptance and understanding of your life purpose, that your entire living journey is in pursuit of a life purpose, and that there is infinite life beyond this physical incarnation, it's so much easier to let go of all of that sense of lack and that sense of avoidance, because that's also a consequence of poverty consciousness, avoidance. It's like we can't sit around waiting for, and trust me, I'm preaching to, well, it's not preaching to the choir, because I'm about to actually point out my own great flaw, and that is that we want everything to be perfect. We want everything to be in alignment in order for us to take a leap of faith. But that's not how faith works. Faith means letting go of control and trusting. And poverty consciousness sinks us into a feeling of not really ever being good enough to trust, because we don't believe that we're worthy of that kind of trust and love. And it's programming, and we worked so hard on it, but there will always be little things that come up from other chapters of our lives or from other experiences in our lives, hidden gates of trauma that come from so many different sources. It could be a teacher at school, it could be a parent, it could be a brother or a sister, it could be a dog that bit somebody when they were a child, it could be a car accident that we had when we were very young, or even as an adult. It's like there's, when we're not prepared for something, which obviously unexpected incidents prevent us from being, our reaction to things will be unpredictable in many ways, but predictable in one particular way, and that is that the majority of us will not be very spiritually centered in our first reaction and response because of poverty consciousness being so deeply programmed into us. But we know better than that. So anyway, I'm talking a lot about that only because it sets the tone for the entire reading, because what that poverty consciousness is related to is we are this King of Pentacles right now. This is how powerful we are right now. And yet the Five of Pentacles that we just saw, that poverty consciousness, is all based on this Nine of Swords energy. We're fearful of the unknown. We're fearful of what's going to happen to us. If we don't pay our bills, if we don't scrub our toilets, if we don't wear a mask, if we don't brush our teeth, if we don't, I don't know, the list is endless. And the reality is that everything that we do has consequences, and that's fine, because consequences are what force us to level up, because we have to react to them, whether they're positive or negative. So whatever happens, it is the intended outcome for you. And it's so important that we focus on seeing this for what it is. This person is concerned about things that they have no control over. And as a person who used to be a warrior, and who used to, sometimes have sleepless nights as a result of the level of control energy that I was attached to, I know that it is possible to make a tangible decision and a concerted effort to changing that dynamic within ourselves, to understanding finally that we do not have any power outside of the present moment, and we could save ourselves a lot of stress and a lot of wrinkles and a lot of discomfort, and we could give ourselves a lot more joy if we would just accept surrender in that way. And that's what this is all about. In our past, we have the Two of Wands. So this is us being in a very informed place to make a large decision about our lives in the past. And, whatever relates to your current circumstances in life in terms of what the biggest choices that you've made to have caused your present circumstances, living circumstances, prospects. So because that's in our past, that's telling me that whatever the decision was, that was probably quite radical and probably quite transformative, was perfect. It's exactly the decision that was needed in order for you to forge ahead on your journey, because it led you to here. This is our underlying past energy, the Wheel of Fortune. the entire reading is based off of the idea of there being this change of fortunes. I know that most of us had really intensely difficult cycles leading up to where we are today. This portal that we've moved into now is as much as it's chaotic on the outside in the world, on the inside, we are soaring at this point by comparison. There's a lightness of being to having answers and understanding things from a certain perspective. It just makes so much of that potential for heaviness pretty impotent. I didn't dwell on those because past energies right now are only interesting in the sense of what they're leading to in our current prospects. And in our immediate future, we got this person, the Four of Cups. Again, we've had this a lot lately, and this is because it's for the collective. I think this is, I'm going to sound, well, this risks being controversial, so I apologize for offending anybody if they are offended by what I'm about to say, but in light of everything that's going on in our world right now in terms of dealing with inequality and how we treat people in our society, it would go a long way if everybody also had a little bit more gratitude, no matter who they are and what side of the fence they find themselves on. If they had a little bit more gratitude, and if they really looked at their lives and they were grateful for the things that they have, then I think that there would be a much more constructive approach to how we empower each other rather than fight each other. And this came very strongly through in the clarifiers because we got the Six of Pentacles, which is being in that position where we are able to be generous of spirit and feel that we're here to uplift those around us. After all, that is the measure of true power and true authority, is that when we are in our element in terms of those aspects of ourselves, when we're in our full power, we use our authority to elevate others, not to crush them, not to destroy. I don't care what the motivations are. We do not destroy in response to destruction. That is idiotic. Sorry if you disagree with me, but you can also get the fuck off my channel. I couldn't give a shit. I'm sick and tired of this kind of craziness in our society where nobody can speak their mind about anything. Which leads to this. The Six of Pentacles is being trumped by this feeling. This is the reason why we fall into that kind of energy. The destructive energy is because we're so focused on those 10 swords in our back. But we always forget, or it's easy to forget, that look at the hand of this person. He's very conscious of the fact that you're not seeing the full picture, and he also has his head turned towards the horizon, towards solution, and those dark clouds are actually moving away. So it's renewal. So because these are immediate future energies, I believe that that's what we're actually being tested on, is our ability to move beyond all of these restrictions. You know, we have to move beyond that 5 of Pentacles and that 9 of Swords. We have to move beyond the 4 of Cups and the 10 of Swords. We have to look at life in terms of the opportunities that are actually sitting in front of us and being offered to us, rather than crossing our arms and saying, well, this isn't the way that I wanted it to be, and this isn't the way I imagined it, so what the fuck am I supposed to do with all this shit? That goes on the material plane as much as on the spiritual plane. We don't get to pick and choose our lessons. Everybody has to learn them all. That's life. And the lessons are boundless. We will always be learning as long as we are. Well, there's actually no condition to that, because our soul is eternal, so get used to it. One little lesson that you're learning right now, it's a tiny, tiny little dot in the grand experience of your soul. Your very powerful soul. You incarnated now in this time. You chose to be here for this time. You've had all of this experience of how society has changed so rapidly in your lifetime. It's for a purpose. It's for you to learn, to elevate your own frequency in order to have that effect on your environment, whether it be just your neighbor, your partner, your children, your cats, whatever it is. You are a vessel of light, and you're here to be the light to others. Light yourself up first, sure, but with the intention to do so for others. As long as you're doing that, you are on your path. Now, what do we have in our crowning energy? Another restrictive card, the 4 of Pentacles. So we're at a crossroads, basically, and we're getting ready to move beyond this very comfortable place, because this is very limiting. And whatever you are doing right now and wherever you're at right now in your life, I can guarantee you it's limiting, and you are limited. That's not to blame you by any means for that. It's just simply the energies push us into that direction. To clarify, on that card we got the 8 of Pentacles and the 8 of Cups. And of course the 8 of Cups is walking away, making a conscious decision to walk away from this restriction. But in order to do that, we have to unshackle ourselves and actually give ourselves permission to do something new, and also maybe force ourselves to have a little bit more of a sense of self-belief, I guess, is the only word that I can really come up with. It's not a particularly poetic one, but how we're represented in our environment at present, we got the star. So we are embodying this spiritual alignment within ourselves, where it's emanating from us. People sense at this point, they know the value of the work that we've done. We're starting to get a little bit more, not necessarily recognition, but acceptance from others that whatever our identity is that we are portraying, we may have found ourselves struggling for some time to actually get people to take us seriously, or actually even give any credence to the idea that we are on a healing journey and that we are seeking to use those untapped resources within ourselves in an evolutionary spiritual process. Now, this came out clarified by the 9 of Wands, and also the Magician. So, what this tells me is that we have a little bit of an angel and devil on the shoulder situation where there's a weariness within us. There's a spiritual injury that we are attached to. It's deep, it's karmic, and in this lifetime it probably manifested in a relationship with a core karmic player in your life, whoever that may be. For you personally, you'll know, but the one key traumatic figure, there's always at least one, that's central to your development, and the development of a massive trauma too. This person or this karmic element keeps you in that space that prevents you from tapping into this 100%. It's everything about that, about this reading. It's about something still preventing us from embodying the fullness of our intention and our power. When I say power, I mean spiritual power. It's not something that depends on us. It depends on life, the entire life force of the universe. And the only way for us to move beyond it is to trust the Magician within, is to trust the infinite power, as I just said. And only you can make that decision to fully entrust your journey to Source, to Spirit. If you want to keep attaching yourself to the idea that somehow you are responsible for what happens to you on a spiritual level, and that somehow you can usurp and manipulate or self-limit, self-restrict even, you're always going to find yourself at a loss when you experience new things, because you won't be experiencing them with an embrace of the new and an embrace of the infinite possibilities that can arise. You're looking at it from the point of view of that. And what's the point of that? Have you ever not landed on your feet? That's an interesting question, right? A very simple one, and a very simple one to answer too. In our environment, we have the 7 of Swords. And it came clarified by the 3 of Pentacles. So we're having some real issues with group interaction. There's issues of trust. There's issues of a separateness in our identity and in our social identity and the truth of our soul. There's an element of hypocrisy within us. We are not... because we don't trust our own inner essence, we project onto others that they are untrustworthy, unreliable, and should always be doubted. And all of those things are simply a reflection of how we feel we should be treated when we're out of alignment with spirit. And as soon as we realign with spirit, we don't have that problem with the outside, because it doesn't really matter. The outside is just a reaction to our truth. And if we are aligned with spirit, then any reaction to that is inconsequential and unimportant. So it's about trust, and it's ultimately about trusting ourselves. Because once we trust ourselves, we naturally trust everybody else. And it doesn't matter if we trust them to assist us or to fuck us over. I hope that makes sense to you. But it's better to build together in community than it is to always be sneaking around trying to implement some kind of personal agenda based on poverty consciousness. In our psychology, we have the Three of Cups. So there's a real desire to be in a celebratory state of mind and in communion. So there's a lot of paradoxes here. There's a lot of inner struggle that I sense. And I think so much of that has to do with Mars in Pisces. I think that the watery energy is not just diluting a little bit of the Martian power, but also it is refocusing feelings, toxic feelings like anger, into something emotional, and that's causing an inner turmoil that's completely out of alignment with our truth. And we are doing it in an automated way. It's a reactive inner struggle that we have to cut the umbilical cord with once and for all. Excuse me. And as always, our clarifier on how we do that is the High Priestess, because the High Priestess is in perfect alignment between the knowingness of the light and the dark. And she knows that in order to challenge the dark, in order to vanquish the dark, she has to embody the light. But in order to embody the light, she has to know the dark. So we accept that journey. We accept the things that have been painful, the things that have been in the old Piscean paradigm would have been devastating to us, would have been, our badges of honor to show that we paid our dues in some shape or form, that in the age of Aquarius has absolutely no value. And we're learning that in real time. You're learning it as you're watching this. You'll learn it in your experiences in the next week or two. Through doing this inner work. And what is our outcome for this glorious week ahead? Ten of Pentacles? But wait, Ten of Pentacles is a card of fulfillment, right? Fulfillment. I wanted to say fulfillment doesn't last. So what I mean is fulfillment is not self-sufficient. Fulfillment is an end goal, but everything about our experience, everything that is truly spiritually enlightening is the journey. So when we get to the Ten of Pentacles or the Ten of any of these, yes, that's a sign that we're heading into some really beautiful energy and we're going to be comfortable, and that legacy will allow us to flourish and also to, in turn, sort of finally take that Empress energy and spread it and actually be the loving spiritual guide that we all are to ourselves and to others. But it comes at a cost. When you get to the end of a journey and you sit and you take in the view, smell the roses, so to speak, you have to let go of something, and the sacrifice in this case is this. We got the Five of Swords reversed. So I'll put it up right so you can be reminded of what that is. Five of Swords is a false victory card. Five of Swords indicates that we may win, but at what cost? We lose relationships, we lose any number of things, right? It depends on your personal circumstances, but this is a pattern. This is something that we experience over and over again in life, and it becomes a behavior that then is part of who we are until we break free of it. So, when we have ego wounds, we constantly are looking to fill that void in order to feel better about ourselves where that pain exists. And so the Five of Swords is specifically looking for that fulfillment at any cost, so that you don't feel pain, so that you don't feel exposed, so that you don't feel vulnerable. And ultimately, what does that do? It makes you a loser, because vulnerability is strength, and you're avoiding it at all costs. But that's stopping you from experiencing something that the universe is going to come along and force you to experience anyway, because you can't hold on to what you think is your Ten of Pentacles, because guess what the universe is coming along and giving you as our final clarifier? Death. That's right. We're ending something again. This time it's pretty huge all over again. I don't know what that is for you personally, but I imagine that it's significant and that you probably already have an inkling of what it is in your life. For some it may be tangible. For others it may be an attitude. For others it may be a habit. But it's happening. I wish you a very safe and centered week ahead, and I hope that you found your truth in these messages, and I look forward to our next session. See you next week. In the meantime, infinite blessings, infinite love, and namaste.